She whispered, "Stay with me." And everything changed. I didn't move to escape anything dramatic. No bad breakup, no job loss, no scandal. Just a slow, creeping kind of emptiness that made the air back home feel too thick to breathe. At 24, most people are chasing careers or running wild through cities that never sleep. Me. I moved to a quiet suburb I found on a map with more trees than streetlights. I told myself I needed a reset. That's what people call it now, right? A reset. Like life's some game you can pause and restart. I didn't know anyone. I didn't want to know anyone. I thought I'd fix up my little rental house work at the auto shop, eat frozen pizza on Fridays, and let life be simple for a while. But then came that Saturday afternoon. I was walking back from the hardware store with a bag of tools and no plans. The kind of hot day where the pavement burns through your shoes and the sky is too lazy to cloud over. That's when I saw her kneeling by a garden that didn't want to grow soaked from a hose that had given up holding itself together. She was fighting the hose with a quiet fury, soaked jeans clinging to her knees, hair stuck to her cheek. But it wasn't the struggle that caught me. It was her eyes. There was something hollow in them, like a woman carrying a grief she hadn't had time to unpack. I should have walked past. I almost did. But some instinct pulled me back. "Need a hand?" I asked, raising the bag like a peace offering. She hesitated, looked me over like I might vanish if she blinked, then nodded. That's how I met Samantha, the woman 2 houses down, the one who kept her blinds drawn and never waved at neighbors, the one who I'd later find out hadn't spoken more than 5 words to anyone since the funeral. That small gesture, a patched hose, a quiet smile, should have been nothing. But looking back now, it was everything. Because life doesn't always introduce the most important people with fireworks or first kisses. Sometimes it's a leaky hose on a hot afternoon. Sometimes it's a stranger with a tool bag. Sometimes it's a widow too young to be one who says something so honest it knocks the breath out of you. And sometimes, the most unexpected person becomes the reason you finally stay. I didn't see Samantha again for a few days after fixing that hose. But she lingered in my mind like a song stuck on repeat quiet haunting and impossible to ignore. There was something about the way she'd held herself proud, but brittle, like a tree still standing after the storm, but not without damage. The next time we crossed paths, it wasn't some dramatic moment. I was sitting on my porch with a can of soda, and she was walking home with a paper bag of groceries. She gave me the smallest of nods. That was it. No words. But that one gesture meant something. It meant she remembered me. It meant maybe I wasn't invisible. 2 days later, I spotted her again, this time hunched over the porch steps that led to her front door. One of the planks had cracked, and she was trying to hammer it back in place with the wrong kind of nails, and a hammer that looked older than both of us. It would have been easier to mind my business. But that's not who I am. "Need backup?" I asked already, crossing the street. She didn't smile this time, just gave a tired little shrug. "Be my guest." I didn't say much. I just worked. Hammered in a new support board, realigned the plank, and made it safer, all while she sat silently a few steps up her knees, hugged to her chest, watching with eyes that looked 1,000 miles away. "I'm Ethan," I said again when I stood up. "Samantha." Same name, same soft voice. This time she didn't retreat so fast. "Lemonade," she offered, gesturing to the house. I followed her in. Her home smelled like lavender and lemon oil, the kind of clean that comes from someone trying to maintain order in a world that no longer makes sense. The photos gave it away, the one above the mantel of her, and a young man in uniform, his arms locked around her like a promise. "That's my husband," she said when she caught me looking. "Was." I froze. "I'm sorry. Car accident. 6 weeks ago." There wasn't much to say after that. I drank my lemonade. It was too sweet, but I didn't complain. She didn't ask for sympathy. She didn't even cry. She just sat across from me on a chair that looked like no one had used it since he died. She wrapped her arms around herself like armor. People don't realize grief isn't loud. Sometimes it's just quiet, heavy. It fills the room like smoke, and all you can do is breathe through it. Before I left that day, I paused at the door. "If you ever need anything fixed," I said, "I'm down the street." Samantha nodded, but I could tell she wasn't the kind of person who asks for help. Not anymore. Still, 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, she didn't say a word, just handed me a broken picture frame and a set of tiny screws. It slipped off the nightstand. I fixed it while she sat at my kitchen table. We didn't talk about the picture. We didn't talk about him, but I saw the photograph inside the same man from the mantel, and I saw her hands tremble slightly as she held it again. It became a pattern after that. Little things. A porch light that flickered, a leaking kitchen faucet, a busted fence latch after a windy night. Always small repairs, always quiet moments, and each time she'd linger just a little longer. I never pressed. I never asked about her past, her pain, or what she did before life cracked wide open. I just kept showing up, kept fixing what I could. I think that's what built the bridge between us, not the repairs, but the fact that I never demanded anything back. One stormy night, I saw her garage door flapping violently in the wind. I ran across the street and held it down while rain soaked me to the bone. Samantha appeared in the doorway barefoot, her hoodie too big for her eyes wide. "I couldn't get it closed," she said. "Go inside," I shouted. "I've got it." She tried to protest, but I waved her back. By the time I wedged it shut, I was soaked and shivering. When she let me in, she handed me a towel like it was nothing. Like this wasn't the most anyone had done for her in weeks. She gave me sweatpants, a hoodie that probably belonged to him. I changed in the bathroom and came out to find her curled up on the couch. The house was dim lit only by the fireplace. Thunder cracked the silence. Then she said it. "I'm too young to be a widow." Her voice didn't break. It just landed in the room like truth raw and uninvited. "I know," I said softly. She looked at me, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I don't want to move on," she whispered. "But I can't keep living in this silence." I crossed the room slowly, sat on the edge of the couch. "Then don't," I said. "Just be here. With me." She didn't respond with words. She just leaned into me. We stayed like that for hours, maybe the whole night, her head on my chest, my arm around her shoulders, listening to the storm rage while we built a silence that wasn't empty but shared. That night changed something between us. Not instantly, not in the way people expect. There was no dramatic kiss, no promises exchanged, just a shift, a quiet understanding. She didn't ask me to stay out of desperation. She asked because for the first time in a long time it felt okay to not be alone. The next morning, she made coffee. We sat on the porch, both wrapped in blankets, watching the sun fight its way through the clouds. We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't need to. But the wall she'd built, it had a crack now. And in that crack, something small and fragile had started to bloom. Hope. The days that followed felt softer somehow, like the air around her house had shifted. She still moved like someone carrying something heavy, but now she walked with just enough ease that you could tell she wasn't holding it all alone anymore. At first it was small things. She'd wave from her porch when I pulled into my driveway after work. She started coming by with little excuses, asking to borrow a tool, returning the hoodie I'd worn that night, even though it smelled like lavender, and something warm that lingered longer than I expected. One Saturday, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it to find her standing there with a grocery bag in her hands. "I made too much," she said, not quite looking at me. "Thought maybe you'd want some. It was stew rich and warm, the kind that sticks to your ribs." We ate at my small kitchen table, passing a loaf of bread back and forth like it was some kind of silent contract. We didn't talk about her husband. We didn't talk about what we were doing either. But when she smiled between bites, just a little, my chest tightened in the best way. Sometimes you feel something shift before you understand it, like gravity pulling you towards something you didn't know you needed. Over the next few weeks, our lives began to blur at the edges. She'd come over and sit on my porch while I worked on my truck. I'd drop by with coffee when I knew she had a long day. We didn't define anything, didn't use words like dating or relationship. It was slower than that, quieter, gentler. One afternoon, I was under the hood of my truck when she came over with 2 lemonades and a look I hadn't seen before, nervous but purposeful. "I need help," she said, voice almost too quiet to hear. "With what?" "My attic," she said. "I haven't been up there since James died." I put my wrench down and wiped my hands on a rag. Let's go. The attic was warm, musty, the kind of space that holds memories like ghosts. She hovered near the ladder as I climbed up. When I popped my head through the hatch, I saw a stack of boxes labeled in Sharpie camping gear college stuff Christmas decorations, and James's things. I didn't touch anything, just looked around, then called down to her. Anything you want me to bring down? She climbed halfway up the ladder, peering into the darkness. That one, she said, pointing to the box with her husband's name on it. I carried it down like it was made of glass. We sat in the living room, the box between us like a fragile secret. She opened it slowly. Inside were photos, medals, a folded hoodie that probably smelled just like him. Letters. His watch. She pulled out a photo of them on their wedding day, both grinning eyes squinted from sunlight and happiness. She didn't cry. She just stared at it for a long time. I used to think grief was loud, she said, like in the movies. But it's not. It's quiet. It's all the spaces where they used to be. I didn't say anything, just placed my hand gently over hers. That night I stayed again, but not because she asked, because I didn't want her to face that box alone. We didn't talk much. We didn't touch, not in any romantic way. We just sat close on the couch, letting the past and the present breathe in the same room. And when she finally leaned her head on my shoulder, I realized that maybe love isn't always built from laughter or adventure. Sometimes it's built from silence, from staying when others would leave, from simply being there. A few weeks later, I saw her laughing in her garden, actually laughing. She was kneeling in the dirt, hands covered in soil, tugging weeds with the kind of determination that said, "I'm not giving up." I watched from my porch, unsure if I should interrupt. But then she looked up, saw me, and waved me over. "Help me plant something," she said. "What kind of something, I don't know, just something new." We spent the whole afternoon digging up old roots and turning the soil over. She bought wildflower seeds, tiny promises of color, and we sprinkled them over the fresh earth. "That's the thing about wildflowers," she said, wiping her brow. "They grow even in the worst soil." I looked at her and smiled. "Yeah, they do. That garden became our thing. Every weekend we checked on it together, watering, pruning, waiting. And with each bloom, something in her seemed to soften. She laughed more, spoke more, started telling me stories about James, funny ones, sweet ones. At first I wasn't sure if I should laugh along, but she wanted me to. I could see it in her eyes. "You don't have to pretend he didn't exist," she told me once. "He was a good man, but he's not coming back." That was the first time I realized she wasn't looking for a replacement. She was just trying to learn how to live again. One evening we sat on her porch with our feet up, drinking beers and watching the sunset. "Do you think," she asked slowly, "that it's okay to be happy again?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Even if I still miss him, especially if you still miss him." She looked at me for a long time. "You make it easier. I'm not trying to fix you," I said. "I just want to be here. However you need." She reached over then and took my hand. That small gesture, more intimate than any kiss, was her way of saying, "I trust you." It wasn't perfect. Some days she'd go quiet again, disappear into her thoughts. But I didn't take it personally. Grief doesn't follow a straight line. Some mornings she'd cry while making coffee. Some nights she'd fall asleep on the couch with old letters in her lap. But I stayed. And she let me. It was during one of our walks through the park that she surprised me again. She stopped by the lake, staring out over the water, and took off her wedding ring. She didn't cry. She just held it in her palm like she was feeling its weight for the first time. "He'll always be with me," she said. "But I think he'd want me to stop standing still." She looked up at me then. "I'm ready, Ethan." "If you are." I stepped forward, took her free hand, and nodded. "I've been ready." From that day forward, it wasn't just about healing. It was about building something new together. Spring melted into summer, and the garden we planted together exploded in color. Pinks, oranges, blues, wildflowers dancing in the sunlight like a quiet celebration of everything we had survived. Samantha would walk barefoot through the yard in the early mornings, a mug of coffee in hand, her hair loose around her shoulders. Sometimes she'd look back at me and smile, not saying a word. But that smile, it said everything. We weren't rushing anything. We still had our own houses, our own rhythms, but more and more we found reasons to share the little things: morning coffee, late-night thunderstorms, Saturday trips to the farmer's market. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was a slow unfolding like a sunrise. One afternoon we went to a local flea market. Samantha loved browsing old records and antique dishes, and I was just happy to tag along. We passed a vendor selling handmade wooden signs, the kind people hang in kitchens or hallways. One of them read, "What once was lost can still be loved." She paused in front of it, staring. "Do you like it?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "It feels true." I bought it without saying another word, and later when I hung it up in her kitchen, she stood behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. We didn't need to say anything. Some nights were still hard. Grief, I learned, doesn't leave. It just learns to share space. I remember waking up once to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window, clutching James's dog tags in her hand. "I feel guilty," she whispered, "for being okay, for laughing, for sleeping next to someone else." I sat beside her, not trying to fix it, just letting her talk. "You're allowed to be happy again," I said gently. "You're not forgetting him. You're honoring him by living." She nodded, eyes glossy. Then she laid back down, curling into me like she had nowhere else in the world she'd rather be. We started taking weekend trips, short drives to small towns, picnic blankets in the back of the truck, her bare feet on the dashboard. We weren't running from anything. We were running towards something. I remember one trip in particular, late July. We stopped at a roadside diner for pie, and the waitress assumed we were married. Samantha didn't correct her. Later in the truck, she laughed. That used to make me flinch, the idea of anyone assuming. "Did it bother you this time?" She looked out the window for a moment. "No, not at all." That was the night she kissed me first. Not like a friend, not like someone healing, but like a woman choosing. After that, the walls that had once surrounded her heart seemed to fall piece by piece. She started leaving a toothbrush at my place. I started learning how she took her tea. We didn't make announcements or big decisions, we just showed up for each other. When fall came, the leaves turned gold and fire red. Her house looked like something out of a postcard. We carved pumpkins on her porch and handed out candy to neighborhood kids. She wore a flannel shirt that used to be James's. She told me that, but she tied it at the waist, paired it with jeans and a messy bun, and somehow made it hers again. That night, we sat on the porch after the last trick-or-treater left the bowl of candy half full between us. "You ever think about what's next?" she asked. "All the time," I said. She smiled without looking at me. "I'm not afraid anymore." That was when I knew she was really ready. We started talking about moving in together, not as a solution, not as a replacement for what either of us had lost, but as a step forward. It wasn't easy. She had closets full of memories. I had habits formed in solitude. But we figured it out. The first night we shared a house, we danced in the living room to an old record player we found at a thrift store. The lights were low. The wine was cheap. But when I spun her in that living room, her laugh echoing off the walls, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. She began volunteering at the local school, helping with art classes. I got a promotion at the auto shop, managing the team. We started hosting little dinners, just a couple of neighbors at a time. Nothing fancy, just warmth and food and conversation. Her world got bigger again. Mine did too. One afternoon, I came home to find her in the garden, humming to herself as she clipped flowers into a vase. The sun hit her just right, turning her hair to gold. She looked up. "What?" Nothing, I said, just, "You." She blushed. "You're staring. Can you blame me?" She rolled her eyes and threw a flower at me. We laughed more in those days than I ever thought possible after what we'd both been through. One evening, we drove to a lake at sunset, the same place where she'd once taken off her wedding ring. We sat on a blanket, passing a bottle of wine between us, and watched the sun sink into the water. "I never thought I'd feel whole again," she said, voice soft. "You're not alone anymore," I reminded her. She nodded, leaning into me. We watched the stars come out one by one without saying much. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, familiar, like we had carved out our own little corner of the world where it was safe to feel everything. And just when I thought she had settled into that peace fully, she turned to me and said something that changed everything again. "I want to try," she said. "Try what again?" "Life. All of it. With you." I reached for her hand. Me too. In the months that followed, we slowly started planning, not a wedding, at least not yet, but a life. A future. We painted the spare bedroom together, made it into a reading room. We adopted a rescue dog named Tucker, who liked to sleep between us on the couch. She started writing again short stories, poetry, even a blog about grief and recovery. Her words helped other people, but more importantly, they helped her. "I forgot I had things to say," she told me once. "I never did," I replied. We built a routine, lazy Sundays, grocery runs, fixing things around the house together. But we also made time for adventure kayaking trips, weekend getaways, cooking new recipes just to laugh when they failed. And always that wildflower garden out front kept blooming. Each year she'd plant something new. Each year we'd pull weeds together. And every year I'd look at her and think, this woman, this strength, this love, none of it is an accident. She didn't choose her pain, but she chose what to do with it. And somehow in the quiet after the storm, she chose me too. Some people think love happens in a flash, in a kiss, in a look in one unforgettable night. But I think the truest kind of love builds slowly like a house. You lay one brick at a time, and you weather every storm that tries to knock it down. What Samantha and I found wasn't about fireworks or grand declarations. It was about showing up, about choosing one another again and again, even on the days when it felt hard. Especially on those days, there's something sacred about holding space for someone's pain and still seeing their worth beyond it. And it's just as sacred to allow someone to do the same for you. She never stopped missing James, and I never asked her to. Loving someone new doesn't mean erasing the past, it means honoring it and still daring to believe that joy is possible again. One quiet Sunday morning, I woke up to find Samantha sitting on the edge of the bed, sunlight pouring over her shoulders. She turned and looked at me, her eyes soft. "You saved me," she whispered. I shook my head, sat up, and took her hand in mine. "No," I said. "You saved yourself. I just stayed. Sometimes staying is the bravest thing we can do. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It walks in quietly, sits beside you in your darkest hour, and simply says, 'I'm not leaving.'" So to you, yes, you watching this right now, if you're grieving, if you're lonely, if you've ever looked at your life and thought, "Is this it?" Please know this, the story isn't over. Not yet. There's still laughter ahead. There are still warm hands, soft mornings, and second chances waiting around corners you haven't turned yet. All you have to do is stay open. If this story moved you, if you saw a part of yourself in it, I hope you'll like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe too. We're building a community where real stories like this find a home, where healing, hope, and human connection come first. And in the comments below, tell us, have you ever met someone who helped you heal in an unexpected way? We'd love to hear your story, because sometimes the things we share become the bridge someone else walks across. Thanks for being here. Thanks for staying. And remember, love doesn't just find us. Sometimes we have to be brave enough to open the door.